Smart mock is basically taking the already nerdy act of doing a mock and ramping it up another level by really factoring in analytical basis of positional value. So there's going to be a little bit of a distortion in what I highly rank, but it's not as simple as you just draft high value position players every pick. The only real dilemma here is I'm not super high on Mendoza. The mobility isn't quite there. The arm talent is good, but I don't think it's elite. And honestly, the accuracy isn't like a Burrow. So there is some stuff to worry there. He does play really well under pressure, though. If you pass on him here and he ends up being good, that is a total disaster. That's a long winded way of saying we are going Mendoza here, but I don't love it. Number two, this is where we already get contentious. With Ruben Bain, I think people are really galaxy braining themselves into issues because he is so highly regarded in everything but his arm length, and yet that's all people seem to be intrigued by. His win percentage is number two from 2020 onward as a pass rusher. He's just about as dominant of a run defender as you'll ever see from an edge prospect as well. So, what is there not to like? Again, that arm length, which is very short, but it is right in the realm of Aiden Hutchinson, Micah Parsons. This is rehashing what I've already said on TikTok, which is a good reminder for you to check out my TikTok that I've started. Ruben Bain is fantastic. I think people are just getting caught up on one singular number instead of the overarching. At number three, with Francis, weirds me out that people think he might be playing guard. Don't really see that. I think his arm length is more than enough at 33 and a half. Lots of guys have shorter than that and are good. He was number two in true pass blocking protection, which is basically eliminating the gimmicky college stuff where if you're going against three rushers or, it's just a screen, that's going to inflate your numbers. But he's great on the legitimate stuff. As a run blocker, he's very good. He, I think, can even get better in that regard. Like, I think he could be a really, really good run blocker. This will make it a lot easier for whoever the quarterback of the future ends up being for the Cardinals. You're going to have a pretty darn good line, specifically at the tackle position, still young there. You're going to have some legit receiving options, and, at that point, it's on you. So I think that's a pretty easy pick. This one, not so much, because the Sala impact is very real. Arvell Reese, the stuff they could do could be truly magical. I'm not going to do that, and the reason why is partly because of Sala. It is going to be difficult to continually have a good offense when you have a defensive guy as your head coach. You don't have, the Sean McVay continually ensuring the coaching is tip top. So I want to load up on talent here on the offensive side, specifically even more so, though, because Cam Ward was egregiously bad as a rookie, which isn't too inexplicable because, yeah, the situation was pretty bad. He also was very raw, but being he was probably just outright the worst quarterback last year, I think you need to make sure you get some sort of situating in that. And here's where we take Carnell Tate then, who is pretty darn easy to work with. Tate is 6'3" and is a little bit light at 195. He's not the biggest 6'3" you'll ever see, but he is the exact type of receiver I like for these kind of gunslinging types of quarterbacks where he is big for the, jump ball stuff, but he doesn't let that be his only defining feature, as he's kind of in the mold of like a Drake London where yes, he's big, but he also knows how to play a receiver as if he's a smaller build. So, sixth in yards per route run, it's really good. He's playing wide receiver as opposed to slot, 7 percentage points more so than the next receiver. He's at about 87%. So anyone ahead of him is playing wide receiver much less than he is. and he's plus 9 percentage points again on contested catch completions. So he's dominant with the jump ball stuff. But again, don't get too caught up in that. He can run routes at a very high level. He's got a good release. He's not a bad athlete. He's not the most freakish, but he can do everything at a very good or better level, which isn't the most exciting. It'd be cooler if he ran a 4.2 40 and, was 5'10, 160 pounds and only knew how to run streaks. But instead, he's just really good at football and is a good athlete instead. So I like him a lot here to Tennessee, even if, I do agree with the sentiment he's not the best player available. I would love to see Reese with a great mind like Sala, but I just can't let Ward flounder like that again. Here at number 5, I would love to go receiver here as well to just really round out the Giants situation, because I do think you have some serious questions for after Neighbors. Mooney has been good, but last year wasn't his best work, and he is getting a little bit old these days. The tight end situation is not good. The line is not bad, but it's not super exciting. So, with that said, we're going cornerback because the edge situation is actually pretty darn good for the Giants. So, it's hard to find a niche for Reese or Bailey, even if, again, I do think they are very much in the conversation for the best players available here. It's hard to find a way to get them in, and I'm not taking a linebacker this high, so I wouldn't keep Reese at linebacker there. So with that said, we're going Mansoor Delane, who I profess my love for on TikTok. I think he is just a super underrated prospect in this draft, which is really weird because I don't see anything about him that wouldn't excite you. He's fast, he's quick, he's pretty tall, he's got adequate arm length, so it's not like there's anything there that you really point at and say, oh, not for me. He's been good for a while now, so maybe that's part of the issue, but I think, truthfully, the profile for him athletically and as a player is a lot closer than Stingley coming out of LSU than most people realize. So I'm totally fine with him at 5 here. I think this is a very reasonable spot for him, even though he's listed as 10. Next for the Browns, if you have any faith in Shador, that makes one of us. So you would definitely love to insulate for your next quarterback at the very least, but I don't think the value is there for any of these offensive guys. So we stop the run then of Reese falling. I choose him over Bailey. Bailey would make sense as well, given he has similar arm length to Garrett, so it could be a little bit more one for one in the teaching in that regard. But as an athlete as a whole, I think Reese is much more comparable to Garrett, and I'm accepting of him being so super raw, having only 100 pass rushes under his belt roughly at this point in his career, because the Browns' timeline is pretty far away. So I take Reese here. I would love if there was a better coaching situation for Reese, but I do think that Garrett should hopefully mitigate that a good deal. With Reese, he isn't really wowing you at the moment with his performance, but you certainly see the athletic traits and you see some flashes. He just isn't continually winning, though, at the moment. So he is very boomer busty, but I'm fine with that for the Browns. Here for Washington, we're going to go with the next edge, David Bailey, who is just going to add so much talent to a defense that doesn't have it, to be completely blunt. It doesn't really have an identity. It doesn't have the star talent. Bailey could get you rolling in some direction to having a decent defensive line. And if nothing else, he should give you a ton of value as an edge rusher that, is not easy to afford. They saw that firsthand by dishing out a pretty big contract. So this can at least hopefully get them situated with some surplus value. And next we have the look again at what the young quarterback has to work with game, where Shuck did show you some really promising things. It just is going to be hard to truly put it together given you don't have much to work with for that offense. And I think Jordan Tyson here is the play. Lemon is certainly arguable because, the Tyson injury stuff is a little bit of something to be worried about. But I like Tyson because he's more of a sure thing on the outside, whereas Olave will play a fair amount in the slot. So there could be some overlap there with Lemon. Lemon, to his, credit, could transition to the outside. He's a good athlete. He's not super small. You never know, though, with guys that play majority of the time in the slot in college, if they're another Justin Jefferson or a guy that just is a slot only guy. Here with Tyson, I feel safer, weirdly enough, for somebody that so many people are concerned about. I like with Tyson that he is an A or a B in pretty much all numbers. He glides as an athlete. He, I think, is pretty similar to Olave, but I don't mind that overlap because at the end of the day, they're just really good at important things like route running. For the Chiefs, I'm going to break their trend of never care about positional value by going for Jamad McCoy over any of these fine safeties or corners in the case of Caleb Downs, because the corner situation for Kansas City is really bleak. They need somebody roughly as good as Trent McDuffie to make things, viable for them again. And McCoy is a huge gamble. He didn't play in 2025 from injury, but he has shutdown potential and still has the athletic abilities as evidenced by his pro day performance. So I'm fine with taking a chance on him. Caleb Downs would be perfectly reasonable, if not for, again, them having some guys that are similar to him, even if they're not nearly as good. They at least have something there, whereas at outside corner, it's really rough. So we're going McCoy here. For the Bengals, though, they don't have somebody like Caleb Downs. So another Ohio State guy staying in Ohio. That's pretty fun. Caleb Downs, he would be top three, I think, for pretty much everybody if you ignored any sort of positional value concerns, because I do think he's capable of being a premier nickel corner, which I don't have issue with like some people do. Some people still don't realize that nickel is just a starting corner that gets matched up with great receivers in the same line that outside guys do. But, you know, he also does have the ability to be a premier safety as well. So, with all of that said, I think Caleb Downs is about as good as it gets as a player. It's just going to be a question of, can he get into a defense that lets him shine as much as he should? And I think Cincinnati, they don't have a whole lot of talent on that side. I think they can kind of build the defense to be like him in a, smaller version of Kyle Hamilton, sort of. So that's where we go with the Bengals. For the Dolphins, fun stuff here. You can just pick anybody you like that has some value because you need almost everything. Makai Lemon is going to be the pick for me. The offensive line is bad, so Freeling would make some sense, but tackle is at least, you got something there. They finally have, the rebuild full on at this point, so it is rough, but you want to give, you know, some look for Willis, and this can limit how, much pressure is allowed in for Willis in that regard. He can separate at a quick, you know, moment, and also he's going to be able to do stuff even in the screen game to really further limit it. He's seventh in yards per out run. He's good with contested catches. He can make people miss with missed tackles. He's great in a variety of ways, and he's definitely the most valuable guy on the board at the moment. So next, we have a guy that's not very valuable, but again, it's not strictly analytics here for at least the value proposition. Sonny Styles, he is fourth out of 3,500 linebackers in relative athletic score. That is pretty accurate from how he plays as well. He is a super freak athlete, only about 21 years old. He's very young. as well. He's learning how to play it. He's not always the most nuanced, but the foundation is absolutely there. And this could kind of get the defense for Dallas humming at this point because the D line is coming together. There's some stuff to feel solid about with the secondary. This will mitigate, though, that the defensive line is pass rushing oriented, not run defense oriented. Styles is going to be great in the run game no matter what, seemingly. And he does have potential to be just an outstanding coverage guy as well with his athletic profile and already seeming to understand parts of the game. So I think that's a pretty good pick there. Next for the Rams, we're getting a bit spicy. You know we are because we have to scroll down to see the selection. We're going to go with Omar Cooper. It's a somewhat talked about pick these days because it's a bit high for Cooper, but the scheme fit is really there. He's a big physical receiver. Not big in the sense that he's like 6'5". I mean, he's like 205 pounds. And he run blocks at a very high level. He was number 13 in the nation for wide receiver run blocking. That's a quick way to get on Sean McVay's good side. Also, receiver, kind of a need at the moment to go for the three wide receiver sets at a high level. Definitely a need for down the line, though, with Adams being about 100 years old. So Cooper helps now and later. That's why I like him so much there. For the Ravens, we're thinking somebody more in line with somebody helping later because Keldrick Folk is very raw. He doesn't yet totally know how to win consistently as a pass rusher, but he's number 8 in run defense grade from PFF as an edge rusher. He's only going to be 21 as well. I believe he is like 20.6 years old. And he is just so underrated, I think, in a sense of, yes, the pass rushing isn't quite where it needs to be, but lots of people would just think that Mesidor would be the pick here for the Ravens because, yeah, he's 25. That's alarming, but it's also nice because it means he's ready to go right now. 24-year-old Mesidor was about as good of a pass rusher as Keldrick Folk this year and last year. Yes, Mesidor broke out in this, past season, but that's as the number 2 for Miami, and that's as 25-year-old player. I think Folk is a very reasonable selection over Mesidor, even if you aren't too worried about the age thing. Here for Tampa, we're again kind of ignoring positional value just because you have to value it, but you don't have to let that be the determining factor. At the end of the day, you do need to put together a talented squad in most facets, which the interior for the line for them is just really, really rough. You probably feel best about Barton, who hasn't been particularly great. Graham Barton is, a good prospect that should translate, but he hasn't been amazing. So we're going Vega Ione here. He is number 1 in true pass blocking grade out of all players. So that's really nice to see. And he's a good run blocker. Lots of people super high on him. I think he's good. I don't think he's earth shattering good, but getting a assured thing on the interior is good when you don't really have that at the moment. And next here for the Jets, you get spicy again with another guy you got to scroll down with. I'm going KC Concepcion. It is a aggressive take that, he goes this high. There's still lots of good players at high value positions even here, but you feel good about the tackle situation. It's young and talented for New York. You don't feel good about the pass catchers, though, aside from Wilson. And Concepcion is very boomer bust, I will admit. He is 6th in drop percentage, meaning he is really bad with it. But he's good at contested catches, so he's got a little bit of Sammy Coates in him in that regard, Madden legend. He could catch better in traffic than he could open. But he is great after the catch. He's a dynamic athlete. You can do lots of things with him. You can kind of build an offense around him if he does situate the drops. Next for Detroit, this is a pick I love. I wanted to see him go higher, honestly, but I just couldn't make it work. We're going Spencer Fano. He is one of those guys that, again, is being held back by arm length. It's a little bit of, something fair to hold against because the offensive line, it seems to matter a fair amount for just giving you a baseline of play. But as a zone or gap run blocker, I like him a lot. I love him as a zone one. I think he's really good in gap stuff because even though he's only 308 pounds and doesn't have the greatest power, he still gets after you a fair amount. So, he's going to ideally be the Taylor Decker replacement. And I think he could be great at that. If nothing else, though, he should shore up the interior. So that's a 2-for-1 pick that I like. I think his floor is pretty darn high, even though you don't necessarily know what he is positionally, and he's a little bit light. I think he is just so talented and has the right mindset to play as an offensive lineman. Somebody that has the right mindset to play running back is Jeremiyah Love. I know it's a bit late. He's 7 here. We're going 18, but it is hard to get a running back drafted highly with how short their shelf lives are, and also it's difficult because he's going to be like the highest paid running back in the league day one, so it's hard to outperform that contract wise. With Love, his number is 0, meaning 0 numbers or evaluators that I've been able to see dislike him. So that's pretty telling. If you can't really find a hole in, somebody, you got to be pretty good because we go under the microscope at a certain point in draft season. For Carolina, get this, we're being aggressive with a wide receiver. Denzel Boston, number 32. We're taking him at 19. We're completing the biggest receiving room surely in NFL history. You're getting 6'5" after 6'5" 3 times. You feel great about Ted McMillan. I think he was the proper offensive rookie of the year. You got question marks after that, though, for options on the offense. And I hate to say it, I was a Bryce Young guy. I do think you got to start looking at who you're getting in line for after him. Yeah, you got, a little more time to look at what you have. He's under contract, but I do think you start thinking you might need someone else because last year still was not good. And this will at least make that definitive. Hopefully, Boston is good. So you can really say you got options to throw to. You got a solid line. At that point, if you can't make it work, it's probably indicative of you. So we're going Denzel Boston. He's 6'4", 210, but he moves in a smooth fashion. The Keon Coleman stuff, I think, is crazy. He is a better receiver and a better athlete, I would say. So don't get too caught up in fear there. Here for Dallas, again, we're going Avion Terrell, which is really going to get this defense rounded out at this point. You do wonder about Monroe Freeling, at least I did, because the offensive tackles, the offense is always regarded as being set for Dallas, but the offensive tackles, Steele and Guyton, both don't pass protect. And, that's a bit worrying, but they have, at least in the case of Steele, been fine before Guyton is figuring it out. Seemingly, he improved from this year compared to last year. So hopefully that's something. You don't want to overkill on offense. And at this point, this really does bring the defense together. Again, you see the discrepancy in where these guys are ranked. I just don't think, the value is necessarily that different from Terrell versus these other guys. I'm pretty high on Terrell. I think he's a very solid player that is getting held back by not being a crazy athlete that, people love to see. An easy way to get an idea on a corner is to look at how many coverage snaps they have compared to yards allowed. Terrell was playing more coverage snaps than allowing yards 3 years in a row. Really impressive. It's not very easy to do. You don't see that, yearly from good corners. So to see that from him 3 times in a row is impressive stuff. So I like Terrell a fair bit there. For the Steelers, you want to like the idea of Freeling, I think, more than is actually justifiable because he's got all the athletic tools and he's got long arms. You gotta love him, right? Not not quite, I don't think. I think he is still so raw, and lots of Georgia linemen are a bit hard to translate early on at the very least. So here I'm going Blake Miller, a very similar athlete, honestly, to what you get from Freeling, even though Freeling's listed so much higher. And they have similar arm length as well. But Blake Miller is a much better run blocker and has been a plus starter for 3 years now. So I think that matters a fair bit, especially in the case of the Steelers, not to dog on them too much, but they haven't developed all of their young players in ways you would hope. The offensive line is definitely coming together at this point, but you didn't see any development from Broderick Jones his career to this point. So maybe you stay away from the bad juju of Georgia and Steelers there. For the Chargers, great at tackle, don't need that. Safety, you can kind of circle back to. Here, if you feel really strongly about Peter Woods' upside, I like it. But I'm going with TJ Parker, his teammate, who, again, listed a bit lower, but he has been a very consistent, very good edge rusher, and he has good arm length at 33 inches. He's athletic, not super athletic, but athletic enough to where you're not talking about, like an AJ Epinesa type. He is, I think, a little bit slept on just because he's not the flashiest. He's top 20 year in, year out in pass rushing and run defense. So I think he's good. And that defense is really going to need some help because without Minter, it's going to fall off a cliff, I'm telling you now. So for the Eagles, we do go Dylan Thieneman here. I want to go Freeling because Lane Johnson is approximately older than the universe, but there's no way that Freeling would really get time unless somebody gets hurt. And at that point, you're just strictly going in for, next year or years from now, even if Johnson continues to play well, which mitigates the rookie value. But also Thieneman, he could be, a key part of this defense because Vic Fangio loves his deep safeties. Thieneman, he plays in the box well, he plays deep well. He's really done it all. He's graded at a 90 plus in PFF grade twice in his career. Most great prospects don't do that once. For Cleveland, we do go Monroe Freeling here, though. It is, spicy to expect Cleveland to get somebody developmental to develop, but the offensive line definitely needs some work. And, the tools are definitely there for Freeling. So, maybe he does, in fact, put it together and you get something super valuable. He's 21st in true pass blocking as a run blocker, but he could definitely grow into something there. This is nice. Peter Woods is the selection. He's already loaded up for us there. He is weird in the sense that he's kind of developed in reverse, regressed, I guess would be the term. He is still good as of this past season, but he was top 5 in pass rushing win percent back-to-back years. His first 2 years or his 2 years previous this. So that is weird to see, but it's definitely in there, the talent for him. He is, limited in the snaps he played there. He was playing 20% or more, not 50% or more of the snaps, but still, he did show some really high-end stuff, and Bears definitely need interior help. Here for Buffalo, we stop, hating on Mesidor for a little bit because, the win percentage rank, it went up 35 spots from this year and last year, age 24 and age 25 seasons. Weird that, it took him until age 25 to just dominate like that. But at the end of the day, he showed some really high end stuff. The Bills haven't developed anyone, but, particularly on defense. So, getting somebody that's ready made, pretty nice. And for the Niners, Kenyon Sadiq would be really fun. Just adding in another tight end. I could see them in, 3 tight end sets all game. But you got to be a little bit more realistic. The, Trent Williams is even older than Lane Johnson, who is older than the universe thing. Very real. Caleb Lomu, I like him here. He can be the long-term successor. He could also just be a guard at the moment. So at that point, you're getting lots of value situationally down the line. He's only allowed 2 sacks and 808 pass blocking snaps the past couple years. Really think he's a solid player and a solid pick here. Here for the Texans, we're going Caden Proctor. He is somebody that grew a whole bunch in performance this past year, where his PFF grade went up 15 points from last year to this past season. So, you know, he still needs to put it together a good bit. He is somebody that you want to see at tackle because, he's got the height and the weight to never get pushed around all on his own. He has fine arm length. So there's a lot to like there, but he's not necessarily the fleetest of foot. So you do have to wonder if guard is going to be the better thing. At that point, though, the line for the Texans gets shored up. You move Patterson to center, and you have hopefully a very decent line at that point with, hopefully Trent Brown is healthy, which he never is. But what if he is this year? He's getting older. Maybe he's getting healthier. Caden Proctor and Trent Brown would be a huge mungus on that line as well. I didn't think about that. Would be a lot of fun to see those guys get moving. Next, we have Kansas City. And this is one of my guys for the draft. He's injured, and, that has people. Oh, geez, number 53, Caleb Banks. He is ridiculously athletic. He has an RAS score of 99. And in 2024, his last healthy season, his pass rush productivity on the interior was number 6 in the nation. He has endless potential, and he is basically baby Chris Jones, needing development, of course, but, athletically, profiling and such. Who better to learn under if you're baby Chris Jones than real Chris Jones, who is getting old? So that could help ease, the aging there. It gets you set up with potentially the replacement to keep the defense pretty similar as Jones ages out. Next for Miami, we are again trying to set ourselves up for Willis succeeding or whoever the next guy of the future will be. And we're going Kenyon Sadiq here. We're stopping his fall a bit. Number 21, that's about where you see him in consensus boards as well. Sadiq is in a weird situation where it is going to take him a while more than likely to fully develop. These tight ends do take a while, even if they're like actually slots. But Miami has all the time in the world. They're fully rebuilding. And this gives them something to feel solid about identity wise. Mike McDaniel would have loved him as a kind of Kittle type. So that's unfortunate that he's no longer there to see him. But Sadiq could be a nice piece to build the offense around moving forward. Here for the Patriots, there's a big need at tackle, irrespective of if you erroneously think Will Campbell can play it. The fun thing is, though, Max Ian Archer is basically just the absolute reverse of Will Campbell, where Campbell didn't have long arms, he had short ones, and he was not very fluid in movement. Ian Archer has very solid length arms and is a just absolutely ridiculous athlete. So that gives you a nice element of, if you do keep trying Campbell at tackle, you can have a little bit of a different, flavor of tackle on either end. And I do think Ian Archer, the risk is very real, no doubt about it. He started playing football in 2021. So he is not the most sound in nuanced ways yet. But I can't deny the promise he's already shown. He's already a very good tackle. I don't want to get caught up in absolute peak types of scenarios because that will make everybody seem ridiculous. But he has a ton of reasonable growth in front of him, and like I said, he's already good. So I think 37 is a bit too risk adverse for him. I think he's definitely in that back end of first range. And I think then, with the need at tackle for them, that's just ideal. Here for Seattle, there's, kind of the element that we've had with the Rams, fittingly, the, NFC West juggernauts they are. There's not glaring needs. So you can go in a variety of directions? Do you just want to kind of fill out things a little bit further? Do you want to plan ahead? I'm going with kind of both with Colton Hood here. He's right about, as good of a prospect as there is left on the board, but he also just fits a very big need for them. The corner situation around Witherspoon is not good. You have Job penciled in as your guy right now, and he's very, hit or miss. You love the Emin situation at nickel, but there are, some real concerns with Joe being a full time number two. And I think Colton Hood is capable of being good right away. He has shown in his 1 year starting a positive play in man and zone coverage. He's a freak athlete with a 97 RAS score. I think this is a little bit of right now and a little bit of down the road, which is just picture perfect for the Seahawks. You could roll the dice a bit and say that you can get a zone corner later in the draft, but I I like the value here. I think that again, he is somebody that is going to be very much needed to be a contributor early, but is also somebody that could pay huge dividends down the line. So let me know where you think these guys should go. Like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Follow and rate if you're on a podcast. And also be sure to, like I said before, check out my new TikTok for some short form stuff. Thank you for watching, and be sure to be kind to others and yourself.